Welcome to the Daily Objective. Jonathan Hoenig with Nikos Kapolopoulos today. I think I got that right. We've got a wonderful program for you today, a really interesting idea and a number of ideas and a real expert on it because we're talking about an idea and a concept which you hear a lot in objectivism and objectivist circles, and that is the concept of tribalism. We've approached this in different ways over the last couple of months, certainly from Rand's perspective. And Nikos, in fact, has a lot to share on it. He literally wrote the book on it. Here's a screenshot of Nikos's new book, Identity, Politics, and Tribalism, The New Culture Wars. It's available for pre-order on Amazon. I hope you do that as I've done it. And just to kind of give you a little tease, look at some of the great response for Nikos's last book, The Rise of Lifestyle Activism, 5-star recommendations and highly recommended. So Nikos, congratulations on the new book. Thank you for kind of premiering it with us on the Ayn Rand Center UK and the Daily Objective, and tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jonathan. So the idea is there's so much things that are bad outside in the public sphere, things that we sense that are not going the way they should be going. The culture wars, political violence, but also people having their personal life poisoned by bad ideas. And what I try to do is try to find what is the thread that links all these things. So we have, for example, free speech issues. We fight about gender. We fight about race. We say, oh, we are a racist society. Or the other side says, no, it's critical race theory that is destroying this country. Or feminists saying it's men and toxic masculinity that is doing this. And then the other side says, no, it's feminism and postmodernism. So the idea is try to move a bit outside, zoom out from all this, and try and see what is the thing that connects these phenomena. And it could be two things. It either could be that this is something happening in politics, that we have some bad people in politics, and if only we didn't have these bad people in politics, things would be good. Or the alternative is that something is happening here. Something is happening in the way we think, something is happening in the way we perceive the world, and this then goes downstream to politics. And this is the conclusion and the starting point at the same time of the book, which is that it's tribalism and it's something that happens in our minds. And I call it tribalism, and I mean viewing yourself, viewing the world, and viewing others through the prism of a group. So you are not Jonathan, and I'm not Nikos. You are a white male part of the 1% and a capitalist, whereas I am, let's say, something from another group. And our groups cannot communicate because we don't share this one thing which is important, which is our individual minds. And what happens then is all bets are off. Because if your group, because let's say, oh, I'm Black, LGBT, or Greek, but your group is different, then we cannot communicate. And then we cannot communicate, we need to fight. And we fight politically. I want to impose quotas on you, or you want to say that, so it's all the things that we see happening in politics. And of course, no need to mention that the clarity to understand this comes from Ayn Rand's explanation of tribalism. And we can say what makes Rand's understanding of tribalism very, very unique, because the majority of people. Yeah, go on.
I have a quote from her here, and I definitely encourage everyone to check out, just as a starting point, the Ayn Rand lexicon, where there's a number of great, very meaty quotes about tribalism. She asks, "What is the nature and the cause of modern tribalism? Philosophically, tribalism is the product of irrationalism and collectivism. It is a logical consequence of modern philosophy. If men accept the notion that reason is not valid, what is to guide them and how are they to live?" So it really is tribalism, Nikos, just another form of collectivism?
So it is a form of collectivism, but you could have, for example, collectivism on the political level. I think tribalism starts from here. And this line by Rand, if I had to pick one line by Ayn Rand, which is the most influential in my life and work, it would be that line. Because, so she says, when you give up reason, then tribalism is the only possible option. And why? Without reason, you cannot make sense of the world, and the world becomes a very scary place. Think about it today. We have all these fears, environmentalism, or maybe the idea that there's this takeover that's going to happen by, I don't know, by the liberals or the far right or whatever. So the world out there doesn't make sense. Why? Because I've given up my navigating tool. Therefore, how do I get existential security? I cling together with people with whom I share similar characteristics, but characteristics on the perceptual level, like, oh, you look like me, we're both men and women is the enemy, or, oh, we are both part of this minority and there's the dominant narrative, which is the enemy. So then it very soon becomes a low-level civil war of all against all. Again, because we cannot communicate, we have given up this idea that we all share the same universal capacity to reasoning. That's why, again, you hear so often people say, as a woman, I believe this. As a person of color, I believe this. When I hear this, I'm really worried because it tells me that you've given up your capacity to recognize that we can all communicate, and that we cannot be part of a common frame and a common narrative of reason.
I mean, Nikos, I think that's a really great observation. And, it seems, first of all, objectivism always seems completely unique in this emphasis on individualism and on the individual. And I hear exactly what you described so often these days. And, people think of themselves first, it seems more and more, not as an individual with individual choice, but they start listing all these kind of subgroups and then, and line that up. Is part of this appeal to tribalism the negation of free will? This idea like, well, because I'm Greek or was born Greek, I should be like this, or because I was born Black or Jewish or anything else like it, or I have a tendency to be this. There's that almost kind of giving up of free will, which is also so integral to objectivist philosophy.
Exactly, and it's what you said, that objectivism gives this unique perspective. And there was this conference last Saturday, and I think it was Alex Epstein. It was Alex Epstein who said that objectivism is a big comparative advantage. So when you're in the intellectual world out there, objectivism is your nuclear weapon. See, for example, so many people recognize that tribalism is a problem, but most people say tribalism is a problem because it's biological, or it's an instinct, or that we are wired for tribalism. And it's very easy to believe this because you look around and you see, look, groupthink is everywhere, collectivism is everywhere, tribal thinking is everywhere. It's good to have a community, therefore it's something in us. However, there's a different explanation. And this is the explanation that Harry Binswanger gives in How We Know when he talks about groupthink. He says, thinking requires effort. And what is the default position? The default position is not to think for yourself, but to give up this responsibility. It's to give up this requirement that falls over your shoulders. Therefore, what's the second best option? Well, I will go with what most people think. So what might look like an instinct, what might look like something which is that you are wired for, turns out that it is not. Turns out that it is just your giving up of the responsibility to think for yourself. So that's the first very, very unique view that objectivism gives, that tribalism and tribal thinking is not a destiny that you cannot escape. It's actually a failure. It's the result of your failure to own this responsibility to be an independent thinker. And then we go to the second biggest misunderstanding about tribalism. So a lot of people, when you tell them, the public sphere out there is toxic, what they tell you is, yes, because people take ideas too seriously. We've become too fanatical with ideas. Therefore, what we need to do...
You're an extremist.
You're an extremist, exactly. So therefore, what we need to do is we need to meet in the middle. So don't be too much on the right and don't be too much on the left. Come together and see what we have in common, which is, I'm not dismissing it, okay? There's something to it. For example, someone might be in what we call SJW and have very good premises, or someone might end up having some dark views about the impact on feminism or whatever. And this could mean that they've misunderstood some things, but their heart is in the right place. But this is not the solution, because when you say the problem is we need to meet in the middle, you're basically saying I'm not taking ideas too serious, which is exactly the same problem in a different manner that leads to tribalism. It's basically saying, well, the hell we're thinking, let's just try to be good friends and let's not think too much, basically. Let's put aside some things, let's just meet in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, tribalism to me, Nikos, seems almost like sacrifice altruism for the tribe and stopping thinking, stopping your own self-interest for the tribe. And so, as you said, I mean, but wasn't that in effect the default for most of man's life, was the tribe? I mean, that's part of what I think makes objectivism so radical, is that, you know, it's always been the tribe, from the caveman to the Indian and all along the way, even to, you know, Rand wrote about global balkanization, in the sense of like, well, what do the Greeks have in common with the French? It's totally separate things. And, you know, and this idea of America being a melting pot where you have a lot of different people who look different from different backgrounds, but agree on the fundamental. Andy Bernstein, I mean, remember when we traveled around the UK, he has that wonderful comment where he says something effective like, we can disagree about everything, but if we agree on the basic premises of respect for individual rights, then we can have civilization. But tribalism almost seems to put that off, because you're not even thinking at all. It's just my tribe against the other tribe, and even if it leads to blows.
So yeah, not only it has been prevalent, but if you see the biggest disasters in history, you will see the signature of tribalism. And it's not something that happened, you know, in the ancient times, but today it's better. So as part of understanding tribalism, I read a book about the massacre in Rwanda, where the Hutus and the Tutsis were fighting each other, and the Hutus massacred hundreds of thousands of Tutsis. The shocking thing there is that there was no basic difference between the two. They speak the same language. There was no racial, ethnic, religious difference. And by the way, Rwanda was not a backward country as many people think. It was a country where English and French were among the official languages. So many people say, oh, this was just backwards. No. And actually what happened, so someone went to prison and asked some of the people who committed the war crimes, they asked them, what were you thinking? And what they said is, look, because some of the atrocities that happened, for example, is you had to kill your wife because she was part of the Tutsi tribe, or you have to kill your neighbor with whom you spend life. And they said, look, we knew very well that the people we killed were innocent, but they were the other. And sometimes we had to do things like we loved the other person. So that was the person that took care of us, but now we have to slaughter them. So this is exactly what you said. On the one hand, it's a monstrosity to the victim, but also what a betrayal it is also to yourself, because you put the existential prism of the group above your own judgment. So this is not anymore a person you like. This is any person that you like, but you have to suppress it because it is the other. And of course, we see how this is at the root of racism, of all forms of collectivism. But let's not make the mistake to think that tribalism, which is a bad thing, means that any form of solidarity, community coming together is also bad. So I don't know if you want to share something about where you see the difference.
Well, that's always the not the red hair, the straw man that they throw at you. They say, "Oh, you're an individualist, Nikos, so you're just gonna go live in the woods. You're never gonna talk to anyone. You're never gonna trade." You know, so they throw up that straw man and say, you know, everyone's in a tribe, everyone's a collectivist because you live among. But that's not what individualism is at all.
Exactly. So the difference is the following one. Not only you can be a part of group, this group can be very high in your hierarchy of values. It can be your brothers or your sisters, people that you really that you share values with, and you can go to war with. You can jump to the sea to save them, but there's a difference. Do you put higher your judgment or the group? Let me give you an example. Let's think of a team of revolutionaries. Let's say you have a very bad regime, a dictatorship, and there's a group, a band of comrades who overthrow this tyrannical government. But then you see that your brothers and your comrades start operating in a way that breaks your integrity. That's, oh wait, this is not what we fought for. What are you gonna do? Are you gonna shut up and say, well, now we have to be still part of the group. We cannot betray the cause, which is basically, for example, what many did after the Russian Revolution, or you saw it after many revolutions. Well-intending people saying, well, I see we started being the bad guys, but I cannot betray the thing that I've given so much of my life. Now, this is exactly the difference between a community and wearing the existential lessons of tribalism. Do you put your individual judgment? Do you sacrifice? That's, you put a very good word. Do you sacrifice your judgment for the group? And by the way, by doing that, you don't help the group, because if you don't trust your judgment, why are you in this group to begin with? By the way, thanks so much, Christopher. Thank you very much for Christopher, not only for his super chat, but he gives also some lines from Anthem about how we were enslaved by the gods, but we broke the chains, and then by the race. And yeah, if you think about it, in each one of these situations, you give up your individual judgment and your dependent judgment in your mind.
And there's something, Nikos, I know for me that I always was so repelled about being grouped on something like, you know, I mean, I was raised, I've been open about this, I was raised in a Jewish household, and I was always encouraged to, you know, go hang out with the Jewish kids. And it was like, well, I have nothing in common with them. I want to hang out with these kids who are into Transformers or video game. You know, I mean, this idea of grouping yourselves with others by something based on random happenstance. I always just was repulsed by that, even as a child, before I knew about individuals. You know, I always felt this sense of wanting to make my own choices and be evaluated by those choices. Not this sense of, well, you know, he's a this or that, well, that's how they act. So now I want to say one thing. We're talking about, of course, your new book, and a big part of a book is promotion. You mentioned that the book is available for pre-order. And I have to say, I went to your page on Amazon, and is this you, Nikos? Because if it is,
wait,
that's you?
Yeah, but that's a very old photo. I thought I renewed my profile picture in Amazon, no?
Well, this is the current photo, and I'm not a stylist, but I thought there's some other famous Greeks that maybe if you wanted to update your image a little bit, I mean, Pericles, obviously, if you want to go for more that classic thing, but if you wanted to update that, you know, because you're going to be doing a book tour. I mean, Tommy Lee, didn't know this. He was born in Athens, Greece.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
Do a kind of a hard rock thing for the book tour, you could do that. I mean, of course, Aristotle Onassis.
Respect.
Keep it classy, yeah. John Stamos, you know, he's a Greek as well. So if you wanted to kind of do a clean cut thing, he's a little older than you, but just as a thought of, you know, want to update that photo for the book tour, because this is going to be a hot seller.
I hoped that you would end up this tour with my current photo with a beard, but anyway, okay.
Well, again, congratulations. And I'm so glad you're expanding this idea and building on this idea of tribalism, because, you know, here in the US, and it sounds like in the UK as well, it's so obsessive, even to the point, as we've talked about, where you would deny reality. You know, just saying, a lot of Trumpers, for example, from the get-go would swear that the crowd size for the inauguration was the biggest. Why? Because the tribe all agreed on it, even though their perceptual evidence itself said, no, this is not the case. So that sacrifice of your own integrity, of your own mind for the group, seems part and parcel of what tribalism is and what objectivism repels against.
Exactly. And since you mentioned Trump, let me go very, very quickly for some seconds through what the book covers. So initially, there's this theoretical view on tribalism. Then I talk about left-wing tribalism. So we go from Marx to actually the Occupy movement and the latest trends in the left. Then we go to the right, and we go from the right-wingers in the French, after the French Revolution, the Royalists, till the Trump bandwagon and today's quote countercultural right. Then I talk about the free speech issues and how the free speech has become the center of the culture wars and what is the role that tribalism plays there. Then we talk about race, very difficult chapter, because I talk about progressive racial thinking, which is this new way of thinking of many on the left that view the world through the prism of race, trying to think that this is how they're going to eliminate racial injustice. Then I talk about the alt-right, which is the obvious example of racial thinking. And then, so in every chapter, I look at both sides of the aisle, not to say that they are morally equivalent, but to show there's something similar in their epistemology. And the last one is the gender issue. So I have feminism and I have the manosphere or MGTOWs or however you want to call it. And again, see how they view the world under a similar prism, despite the fact that they hate each other.
Well, and here's the pre-order page. We definitely encourage everyone to get on the list for it now. When do you expect it to be ready to roll, Nikos? And by the way, thank you, Daniel, for your contribution. Thank you, Marilyn, for your contribution.
Thank you, Daniel and Marilyn. So it's out on July the 6th. But if you want to pre-order it from now, this is good. It gives it a momentum. And I've given a public promise that if the book does well, I have some, I'm going to persuade the publisher to make an audible version where I narrate in a Greek accent, which is actually, I haven't got any other accent, so it's the only way I can narrate. So
that's awesome. And, maybe then we can get someone to translate it from your Greek accent into English.
That would probably be needed, although it's going to take away some of the beauty. So Jonathan asked, is this book a continuation of Picos Dim theory? Not even in my wildest dreams. I wish it could be. But I like Picos Dim. So Picos Dim theory was so influential to me that I opened the conclusion, which a line from that book, which says something like, the darker the future that comes, the more we have to fight it. Okay, I completely butchered the quote, but yeah, obviously, I wish the book has the clarity and the scope of Dim's hypothesis, but no, it's not a continuation of Leonard Picos' Dim theory. I wish it was.
Daniel echoes your comment, Nikos, that let's meet in the middle means don't take ideas seriously, which you had mentioned as well. He also says that he has very little in common with people in his country. To become tribalist would be to give up everything he believes in. Nikos, I have to say, thank you, Marilyn, but Nikos, I have to say, here in America, still there is a little bit of that rugged individualism that's almost in the air. And I empathize with objectivists joining us from all over the world, where that ethos is just uncommon from the get-go. So I think, and I really applaud what you're doing in terms of building on objectivist framework and building it and bringing it to new people. I hope that's what we did with Textbook. I know that's what your own and so many great authors are doing in terms of bringing in objectivist ideas, to the masses, if you will. So I'm really looking forward to the new book and encourage everyone to check it out.
Thank you. And actually, yes, when I came up with the idea, it was around the time that the Textbook of Americanism was coming out. So I tried to basically do what many of you did there, which is how can I try to apply objectivism, because again, I'm in no way anywhere near to being any authority on objectivism, but how do I see objectivism applying to these issues? Let me say one last thing, since Dalian mentioned this idea of the feeling you have with your compatriots. I'm very tribal in many ways, for example, in sports, but I put tribal in quotation marks. And let me give you an example. Since I moved to the UK, I've been way more passionate about Greek teams or the Greek national team and things like that. Why? Because in my mind, it's a connection to home. So for example, you say, oh, Olympiacos scores a goal. I know my father is happy. My uncle is happy. So it's something very healthy quite often to feel quotes, in many, many quotes. Oh, I'm so proud the Greek won or something like that. It can come from a positive place of rational values, but also it can overtake and become the prism, again, the dominant prism through which you operate, which is not good. But
yeah, I feel the same way. I'll say,
yeah.
I feel the same way about pizza, Nikos. I will swear, and I guess you'd say tribally, that Chicago-style deep dish pizza is the only pizza worth eating, and it all else is shit. But you could also say that's a personal choice and not something that I was born into by nature of race or creed or color or anything like that. So I agree with you. There's something kind of fun about being part of a team this or tribe that, but that's not tribalism in what you explore in the book at all. That's personal choice.
And more on that, by the way, Razi seems to be passionately against your pizza theory. Many thanks. Yes, Marilyn, many thanks for your super chat. We really appreciate your contributions. Now, more discussion on what is and what is not tribalism, or maybe also about how tribalism applies to sports when we move to Clubhouse, which is going to be very soon. So Monday is episode 200. So I know Razi has something prepared for that. I'm not sure, but I'm sure it's going to be very good. Okay. Anything else, Razi, that you want?
No, we'll see you on Clubhouse. Thanks for a great week, and thanks for all of your support of the Ayn Rand Center UK.
Thanks, everyone. See you soon.